Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Spann Report podcast. I'm your host, Spann, and this is episode 87 of the report. And this is also volume 4 of the Art of Disagreement. I got the homie, Mr. Gates of the Haterazzi Radio Show here with me. Say what's up to the people, fam.
No, it's popping.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I know you guys have been kind of waiting for this one.
Oh, shit. Hold on. It's coming through my other computer. Hold on.
Hold on.
Man, this is episode 87 of the report.
Sorry about that. Won't happen again. All right. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, it's episode 87, volume 4 of the Art of Disagreement. Tonight's debate is going to be, does hip-hop negatively affect the youth? I say no. The homie
says yes.
Yes. And this is something that I've spoken about this years ago, man. I think I did a YouTube video about this years ago where I spoke about whether or not hip-hop is responsible for for a lot of the things that go on in the hood. I know Mr. Gates he's had his contentions with hip-hop's influence for quite some time. So this is something I think we could have a really good debate on. And this is something that I think, it's one of those things where like folks have this thinking. I don't believe that it's negatively affecting the youth, and I have my reasons why I don't. And of course, the homie Mr. Gates has his reasons why he thinks it does. But before we get into the rigmarole of the show, I got to let you guys know how to get in touch with us here. And Mr. Gates, we're at the Haterazzi Radio Show, but I got to let you guys know how to get in touch with us here at the Spann Report podcast and let your voice be heard. You can hit up the hotline at area code 313-288-0485. That's area code 313-288-0485. Leave me those voicemail messages. I will play those messages on the show and respond in kind. You can also email the show at feedback@thespannreport.com. That's feedback@thespannreport.com. Leave me those emails. I'll read them on the show and reply to them here on the show as well. Chop it up with your man on Twitter and Instagram on both of those platforms. My name is Mr._Spann. That's Mr._Spann. So chop it up with me throughout the week. And leave your man Spann an iTunes and or Stitcher radio review, man. Preferably 5 stars. I will read those reviews here on the show as well. And for all of your Spann Report needs, man, go to thespannreport.com, www.thespannreport.com. This episode, along with every other episode and every video associated with these podcasts, are available at thespannreport.com. Tell them people how they can get in touch with you over at Haterazzi, brother.
iTunes. You can find the Haterazzi Radio Show. And for everything else, just Google Haterazzi. Everything there is me. So,
indeed, man. Now, we've had these conversations a few times back and forth over the phone, man. And like I said, I did a video years ago about whether or not hip hop negatively affected the youth, man. I'm of the position of where I don't think that it negatively affects the youth, partially because I kind of grew up with hip hop. I grew up with gangster rap, and I know its effect. I know the effect that it's had on me and a lot of people around me. But I'm sure you disagree, brother.
Well, has it had a positive effect on your life, do you feel?
I feel like it's had I feel like the effect that it had on it made me more of a potty mouth. I think that was the only influence that hip hop may have had on me. I'm more of a potty mouth than I would be normally had I probably not been listening to hip hop. But outside of that, man, I really don't feel like hip hop has been like an overarching negative influence on my life and those of a lot of people that I know.
Yeah, well, for most, I came up with hip hop. I am still a hip hopper. I'm starting to love hip hop again because of recent contributions from certain artists. But, I tried to be a rapper when I was younger. Didn't work out. I was a better producer. I've done my time in the industry. Produced a few tracks, nothing major. Did a track for Cannabis and for a few gangster rappers, indeed. But as a father and as an adult who's had experiences in life, I would be lying if I said that hip hop had no effect on me. It's had a very positive effect on me, and if that's so, then obviously it can also do the opposite for someone else who may not have had the same upbringing, who may not have had the same opportunities in life that I had. You know, so when I say that hip hop negatively influences the youth, I'm not talking about the genre as a whole. I'm asking that we hold hip hop responsible for its contribution to a lot of the ills that affect our youth.
Okay. Okay. What was the very first hip hop album that you bought?
The first hip hop album I bought was Rock Box, Run DMC, 1983 or 84.
Okay. Now the very first.
No, hold on. Was that Rock Box? Is that their first album?
Don't give me the line. I'm
pretty sure it was Rock Box. Don't quote me on that, but it was the black and white cover. It was, I had the tape, and they're both standing on it. That was the first album that I hip hop that I purchased or had purchased for me by my mother.
Yeah, you know what? The very first tape, the very first tape that I bought was Ice Cube's Death Certificate. I want to say that was either 91 or 92.
Yeah, that was
that was the
very profound album, by the way.
It was, and that was the very first time that I took money that I had of my own and bought my own music. That was the very first tape that I bought. And
that was a powerful buy. That was a good selection. Because at the same year you could have bought 2 Live Crew, but you bought.
But here's the thing. That's another thing too. Like when it comes to, like, say for instance, artists like 2 Live Crew, like it wasn't as if I was oblivious to 2 Live Crew, right? Like I had heard 2 Live Crew before. Like some of my uncles and some of my cousins and whatnot, they would play this music, but of course my mother wasn't around, right? My mother wasn't around, so they would play this music, and I heard all of these things around. I want to say maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. I was hearing a lot of these different things. And then on top of that, like I kind of look back to like some of the the stand-up comedians that my mother allowed me to listen to, which, you know, for a lot of folks, they would probably say that this was something that my mother shouldn't have allowed to happen. But I was sitting around listening to comedians like Robin Harris, Eddie Murphy's Delirious. That was a classic one. What was that Baby's Kids by Robin Harris and Martin Lawrence, You So Crazy, right? Now, growing up, I got Martin Lawrence in my ear. I got Eddie Murphy in my ear. I got Robin Harris in my ear. I got 2 Live Crew in my ear. I've got Ice Cube in my ear. And to some degree, a little bit like NWA. It wasn't like I wasn't really deep into NWA as much because, you know, when Ice Cube went off and did Death Certificate, he was away from NWA. But like these are some of the things that I was listening to as a child, right? And, you know, I look back at some of it and it's like, okay, you know, I took it for what it was. Maybe it was because of the influence that my mother had to a certain degree to let me know that this was entertainment to a large degree. And then there was the social commentary that was going on with such as with the rapping of Ice Cube. Because like I said, that was the very first album I ever bought in my life was an Ice Cube album. So, you know, for me, it was, I really think that, like, as far as negative influence were concerned, it was more so surrounded around the peer pressure of the people who were actually around me, not so much the music and the comedy and the mass media influences or the media influences, period. I think the people that I had around me had a much more powerful influence on my life than the media and the comedy or the music that I was taking in.
You know, we have to be very careful when we use ourselves as examples of whether these things are true or not. Mm-hmm. Of course, our experience with hip hop is going to be much different than a child who was born in 1991 or 92, mm-hmm. at the tail end of any form of Black consciousness that was on the mainstream in hip hop. See, now the difference is, with our time, when I was younger, is okay. We know ourselves as African American males. We know that we come in all different shapes, sizes, and colors. Yeah, we have the thugs, but we also have the intellectuals. But we're not monolithic as Black men. And make no mistake, hip hop is always going to ultimately reflect African American males. I don't care where it goes on the planet. White kids in Russia, France, wherever they do it, their mannerisms, their style, their fashion will always reflect what they've learned from African-American males. Okay, so back in the day, late 80s, early 90s, yes, we had NWA, but we also had KRS-One. We also had X-Clan. We also had, we had De La Soul. So basically hip hop on the mainstream, this was stuff that was on the radio. This was stuff that was on the video. Hip hop reflected all of these differences and these dynamics that were African-American males. So someone could look at the genre as a whole and say, wow, this is a very colorful group of people, no pun intended. We got the party guys. We got the gangsters. We got the conscious guys. We got everything that represents African-American males as a whole and all their differences. Now, after 1992, well, actually, I'll say after 1996, which was probably the last great year for the genre. After the death of Tupac, when reality rap became the only form of acceptable hip hop on the mainstream, that is, in your music videos and on your radio, things started to change. There's a big difference between a Kendrick Lamar who raps about street life and raps about things that happened in Compton from his experience, and he's rapping about it in the third person, versus Ice Cube when he says, back in the day, here's a little something about a nigga like me, never should have been let out the penitentiary. See, now he's embodying the thug, so the kid who's rapping along with him is embodying that personality trait. So that, and we must keep in mind too that hip hop is the only genre of music that requires a certain level of authenticity from not only its audience, but especially its artists. If you talk about it, you better do it. And so when I say that hip hop has contributed to the negative influences on our youth, I mean every bit of it, because to think otherwise with everything you see, it is, I think, a little bit irresponsible on our part.
Yeah. But you know what? It's interesting that you bring up the thought of the authenticity of the art form and how that's paramount within the culture. And one of the first things I kind of think about when we talk about authenticity is the rise of, say, for instance, an artist like a Rick Ross, right? Whom, most people know that there was a real dude named Rick Ross from Los Angeles who was involved in drug trafficking to a large degree, so much so that it had links to the Contras in Nicaragua, Ronald Reagan, we have that, right? And then you have Rick Ross, who basically took this dude's name, made a name up for himself off of this other guy's name, and created a persona where he's this kingpin drug dealer, where in reality this dude was a correctional officer back in the day, right? So he isn't this dude that he says he is. But even with the vast majority of people knowing that, a lot of people, they'll listen to it just saying, this shit sounds good. But they don't even care so much about the fact that this dude may be lying in 99.9% of the shit that he's talking about right now, right? They don't even care so much anymore to the fact that this guy can go platinum, this guy can have artists up under him, and he has a Maybach music label and an imprint and everything else. I don't necessarily know if the authenticity of the genre or the importance on authenticity is necessarily there anymore. I think right now we're at a point where people are just at a point where they want to enjoy the music for what the music is and what it represents and how good it sounds and how it makes them feel and everything else. I don't know if we're still at a point where that authenticity is as important as it used to be back in the day.
No, we absolutely are. And for a good example, there's a kid. I don't know this kid's name. It's a white kid. Looks like he might have been fetal alcohol syndrome or something. You know what I'm talking about?
Slim Jesus kid.
Slim Jesus, that's his name. Okay. I think he's coming out of Ohio somewhere, and I
don't know where he's from.
Yeah, he's coming out of a small town.
A couple pictures of him.
I'm pretty sure he's coming out of a small town in Ohio, and he's doing drill music, which is exclusive, which has its roots in Chicago. Yeah, and they take a lot of pride in that. This kid did an interview on Vlad TV recently where he was like, I don't engage in this stuff. It's just that this is the stuff I see around me, and my friends have been through this. So, I'm just, and I love drill music, so I'm emulating it. But, those kids in Chicago, they've been calling them out. They're like, if you come here, we're going to beat you up. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. See, at our age, we're responsible enough to know. Obviously, you have to be stupid to really be doing some of the stuff that you say you do, right? But we're talking about this generation, these kids that are shotgunning each other every day throughout the country, like it's nothing, and the soundtrack that praises it and supports it. You got to pay attention that we are the only people who celebrate, who will dance to music that talks about their own demise, that brags about their own demise. The same as your favorite football team, marching out on the field to a song that's saying, "Hey, beat us," we got to remember, we're talking about kids here. We're talking about kids who may not have the same guidance that we have. I think all of us at some point go through a phase where we look to our idols for a dress code, for attitude, for speech patterns, all that stuff. We've all done that.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're a young 15-year-old fan of Kanye West, that's fine. If you're a fan of Donald Glover, that's great. But if you're a fan of Chief Keef, look out. If you're a fan of Bobby Shmurda, look out. So when I talk about the negative influence of hip hop, I'm talking about that segment of hip hop. I'm not making a statement about the entire genre. But I think this deserves exploring.
Well, like with the Slim Jesus thing, I think I saw an interview earlier this week. I think it was the little kid, Lil Mouse, the little kid from Chicago who was doing drill music when he was like 12, 13 years old, and he talking about fuck around, get smoked, and all this other stuff. And I saw an interview that he did on Vlad TV. I believe it was Vlad TV. And, he was talking about how he was just stating facts about Slim Jesus not living this life that he purported to live and everything else. Now, again, Slim Jesus had already come out and said, look, I'm not living like this, right? Now, the funny thing about it was Lil Mouse wasn't living like that either, right? Lil Mouse at 12 and 13 wasn't doing some of the things that he was saying in his music, but he was emulating, to a large degree, some of the things that were going on in the Roseland area of Chicago, right? Yeah. So it's not to say that these stories can't be told, even from the youngest of us, that these stories can't be told. I mean, you think about when Ice Cube and Dr. Dre, Easy, and all those guys did come out. They weren't that old, you know what I mean? Like, I think Cube was a teenager when they came out. I'm not sure exactly how old he was, but they were some young guys when they came out. But the thing of it is, especially when it comes to the authenticity of it, that I talk about is like, you get into the old street code of, the guys who are actively out there doing the shit ain't on the records talking about it, right? They're not, usually it's the guys who are, they were around it. They saw a lot of this shit happen. And I think Ice-T even spoke about it. Like a lot of the raps that Ice-T spoke about years ago were things that, had happened around the neighborhood. He may have changed some of the details to keep people from being incriminated and everything else, kind of like on TV, right? I'm going to change these names real quick. But at the same time, he was like, these were the things that I was living, right? Or these were the things that I was around. So to a large degree, when artists talk about being the truth tellers or their music reflecting the lives that they lived, I do believe that to a certain extent, that a lot of the music that we're hearing is them reflecting on the things that are going on around them. Not so much that they've done these things, but these are the things that have gone on around them, and they're just putting these stories out. Right now, again, I go back into the whole thing of like the peer pressure and the influence of those around you. When it came, and I hate to be so anecdotal about it, but when it comes to the music, yeah, the music was a soundtrack to a lot of the shit that we did in the hood. But I think more so than anything else, the people that were around us, like some of the older guys in the neighborhood, some of our friends when we were younger in the neighborhood, the pressure that you have from those around you, I think that has so much more of an influence than the actual music itself. I think the peer pressure of everyone around you has so much more of an influence?
Well, first of all, we have to respect the power of music itself. Music is the first language that infants understand outside the womb. They've done neurological tests with this. You could take an intricate piece of classical music, and the infant's brain understands it, through neural imaging. I'm not a neurologist, so I don't understand how it works, but I know that that's what it is. Now, the one thing that all humans have had in common, going back into the ancient world, was music. No matter where you find ancient bones of people, you will find musical instruments. Music is something that we need. It feeds our soul. It's food for the subconscious, just as physically we need food for our physical bodies. Now, if you look at the shamanistic practices, if you look at the ancient people, the shaman's job was to drum, and that repeated drum will put his people into a trance, and then he would chant over the drums, which were word symbols, to put his tribe in whatever mind state he needed them in. If it was hunting season, he needed them to think like hunters. If it was wartime, he needed them to think like warriors. And he would use music to do this. And we've always used music to do that. And there's no difference between that and between what's going on today. Hip hop is a very special form of music, right? It's got the melodic, it's got the drum patterns, the repeated drum patterns, right? Which open up the subconscious for whatever. And then you got the word symbols that are put in nursery rhyme like patterns, which is the way we teach small children, because that's the easiest way to get into the brain. Now, it's just as easy for Rick Ross or any other rapper to say, hey, you're not cool if you don't have a diploma. You're not cool if you don't have a degree. I got my motherfucking whatever. It's just as easy for them to say that as it is to, you don't have this car I got. You ain't killed as many niggas as I have. Whether they've done these things in real life or not, these are word symbols that are going into the heads of young, impressionable people. And although there will always be exceptions to the rule, like ourselves, and most kids know it's just entertainment, there will be those who get caught up into believing that this is the way to be cool. This is, if I want these things that I see Rick Ross have, then I need to do the things that he says do. So.
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't necessarily believe that, when you listen to hip hop, or even if you listen to that genre of hip hop, whether or not you listen to gangster rap and everything else, that if you don't fall into that you're the exception to the rule. I don't necessarily believe that. I think that's actually the majority of people who listen to gangster rap or anything like that, that they're able to kind of separate whether or not this is some true account of what I'm hearing. Like, everything this dude is saying is a true account of what he's lived and everything else, and whether or not it's a fictional account, whether or not this is something that I could believe he did, and whether or not it just sounds good. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily believe that the majority of people who listen to gangster rap automatically believe that, hey, in order for me to be cool, I need to do some of the same things that this guy is doing. And that's why
you would be surprised.
You'd be surprised by how many, of course, you'd be surprised by how many people actually do fall into that line of thinking. But I
think we all do. I think we all do.
How so?
Do you own a pair of Jordans?
Yeah, I own a pair of Jordans. I own like 3-4 pair of Jordans. Okay.
Do you own a pair of Air Force Ones, or have you ever?
I own one pair of Air Force Ones.
Okay, I've never owned either because I hate Nike. But you don't think hip hop had anything to do with that? Hip hop fashion had? Why not wear Reeboks, high top Reeboks? They have the same effect on the basketball court.
I'll tell you this. I grew up playing ball, right? I played ball. That was my thing. I had a hoop dream. At 16, you could not have told Spann he wasn't going to the league, right? So when I played ball, like, of course, when I was coming up, Michael Jordan was that dude. You know what I mean? He was that dude. Like, the way that LeBron James is that dude for these kids now, Jordan was that dude for me. So, but to be honest with you, I never even owned a pair of Jordans while he played. I always, like, when the retros started coming out, that's when I first started getting J's, right?
That's right.
But my thing, it never had like a hip hop connotation to it. I wanted it because I played ball. It never was a hip hop connotation to it for me. Right now, I can understand how like an artist like Nelly could come out with a song like Air Force Ones, and like Air Force Ones like were flying off the shelves to the point where like those plain ass Nikes were going off the shelves for like X amount of hundreds of dollars.
But wait a minute, hold on. Why would that happen if hip hop has no influence over people?
I'm not saying that it doesn't have any influence. I understand that song helped make the Air Force One popular to the point where folks were going to the stores and they were buying Air Force Ones, and that they were going to, to the point where Nike was like, oh shit, we got something here, and then they start upping the price on the supply and demand, right? I understand that. But what I'm saying is, for someone like myself, if you're going to ask me why I bought Air Force Ones, it was like, hey, it's because I like these shoes and I also play ball, right? Now, there are a lot of people who bought Air Force Ones because, hey, that song was pretty catchy. It was pretty cool. But you'd be hard pressed to get somebody to buy some shoes or to take a song and say, I'm going to buy these shoes, to saying, well, this motherfucker told me to go kill this nigga. Let me go ahead and do it. You'd be hard pressed to kind of make that leap.
Well, of course, but okay. I had a great conversation with this wonderful lady named Judith Pinkerton.
Okay.
She's a musical therapist, and she has a great program called Music for Life. You guys should check out her website. It's music4life.us. And we had a conversation about music and what it does. And, she talked about how music goes directly to the central nervous system. Okay. And now she doesn't particularly believe that, that music should be blamed for, certain ills. But she will tell you that it's contributory. We tend to listen to music that correlates with our mood or with our thoughts, and so if you're feeling sad, you go find sad music. If you're in love, you find some great love music to enhance the feeling that you're already feeling. But in this case, we're talking about aggression. One of the biggest issues in the African American community is aggression. Violence against each other, be it fighting or actually killing each other. And this music is sympathetic to those feelings. Somebody's doing all these murders. Somebody's doing all this killing. Are they listening to Beethoven? Is it possible that Marilyn Manson is causing a lot of these drive-by shootings and whatnot? I dare to say that 100% of the tape decks or CD decks or iPods in the cars that are pulling these drive-bys are chock full of gangster rap. Not Kanye West, gangster rap, reality rap.
Okay.
And we just have to, we have to explore that, and we have to be honest about it.
Well, yeah, and I agree to a certain degree with that, though, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, like I talked about before, like the influence of those around you, right? But also, like when we talk about like the music that we listen to kind of influence or to get us in certain moods. So like when you want to make love to your woman, you'll put on some, I don't know if the kids really do this shit anymore, but you'll put on like some Boys to Men or some Jordan, whatever.
Chris Brown, and they call it.
I'm just talking about. I'm an old nigga, man. I'm an old nigga, but I'm just saying, like, you put on something more. You'll put on some R&B for your woman when you want to get in that mood. When you want to go, like, I remember when I used to play ball, I would put on like either some Ghetto Boys or some Outkast to get me in an aggressive mood to play ball. Like, I'm ready to destroy this nigga on the floor, right? So I'd put something on really aggressive to get me in that kind of frame of mind. I get that. But the point that I'm making when it comes to these things, when we talk about the music and the music influence, the music only enhanced what I already wanted to do. These things that were, like this want to make love was already in me. This want to like be really aggressive on the basketball court was already in me. So if somebody was to go about the business of trying to go kill somebody or whatever else, that action or that frame of mind was already in this person, right? So they may listen to a Tupac or Bone Thugs and Harmony or Chief Keef or what have you, but that frame of mind was already with them before they even push play on that song.
That is a very, very powerful truth. I can't argue with that whatsoever. Here's my thing. Our rappers of the past were our speakers like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers. Music then, the black music of the day was then used as a soundtrack to enhance these messages. James Brown's I'm Black and I'm Proud was a very powerful statement. You know, women embraced their natural hair, as did the men, right? And that all fell apart once the Panthers went away. Once we went into the blaxploitation era and it was all about pimps and perms, soon we had the Jerry curl, and that's what we went into the 1980s with. But it took hip hop to take away it took Ice Cube leaving NWA and cutting his Jerry curl off and becoming bald head and saying it in his song, cut that Jerry juice and get a bald head, for us to say, you know what, we embrace our natural hair, you know. And so hip our speakers of the day, our leaders of the day, of our youth, when it comes to our young people, are the musicians, right? Now, it's real popular for these musicians to say, you know, it ain't my job to raise your kids. But, you know, as an artist, you do have a responsibility for the influence that you put out on the planet. Why would you, if you have the platform to change the world for the better, if you truly care about your people, why would you not use your platform to better your communities, better the young people who listen to you? You know, and so when I say that hip hop is responsible for the ills in the Black community, it's also responsible for what it's not doing for the Black community. You say it's not your job to make things better. Yes, it is. If it's the kid's job to buy your shit, then it is your job to pay them back with something that they can use later on in life. We know that one of the biggest issues within the Black community is we have a $1.1 trillion spending power. This money goes to shit that cannot grow in equity for the most part. It goes to hair, shoes, and rims. Shit that you can't, you know, these are bad investments, right? With that type of money, with that type of collective power, we could carve out the political changes that we want to see. We could carve out a better existence in a lot of our communities. You know, the businesses that we complain about, owned by the Koreans and owned by the Arab people in our communities that we constantly complain about, we have enough money to oust them and become consumers to ourselves. You know, show the power of the Black dollar. Rappers can really help with that. Instead of a rapper telling you to buy Air Force Ones, they should have continued to tell you to buy FUBU, and then FUBU would have never. You go around rocking FUBU now, it would be a Black person who laughs at you. Oh man, ain't nobody rocking that shit no more. But they'll still be rocking Nike, which was around before I was even born. They'll still rock Gucci. They'll still rock, you know, these other things. But these rappers will continuously tell you, go to any club, go to any nightclub, a Black nightclub, you will see everyone's dressed to the nines in a bunch of shit that rappers have told them to go get. These are grown people now. We're not talking about kids here. So when I say that hip hop is influential for a lot of the ills in the Black community, it's also the things that they're not doing that they're responsible for. So,
well, you know what? Again, though, like I'm just of the mindset that, especially as you know, us as adults, right? Even when it comes to what's cool and what isn't, or you know, they say to buy, you know, X, Y, and Z. You know, if I'm not already inclined to go get that shit, I'm just not gonna get that shit. I know that's very anecdotal, but as an adult, like say for instance, I'm not gonna lie. Here's something that I thought it was really funny, right? I remember, like with this job I got now, I'm making pretty decent money, right? And I went on Amazon and I looked up an Audemars watch. Because watches are kind of my thing, right? So I looked up an Audemars watch and I got my motherfucking feelings hurt because it was the damn watch was like $21,000 at the bottom. At the bottom. Now again, I make pretty decent money, but I wouldn't make it $21,000 throwaway kind of money, right? But I'm like, you know what? I don't really need that shit no way. I'll go ahead and buy this Moto 360 and be cool with it. But but I get that to a certain degree. If I wasn't already, I just kind of feel like this as an adult. If I wasn't already inclined to do it, I probably wouldn't do it no matter who told me to get it, whether or not it was Young Jeezy, Jay-Z, Kanye West, or the fucking president. If I wasn't already inclined to do it, I probably wouldn't do it. And so even with the music, even with the influence of artists like Jay-Z, Rihanna, Beyonce, Kanye, and what have you, if I'm not already inclined to do these things, I just simply won't do it. And that's where it comes. That's where I look at it as far as hip hop is concerned. Now I get it where it comes with the youth. You know, you kind of wonder, are the youth susceptible to these things? But I think, again, that goes into that peer pressure, where that peer pressure is what influences these kids more so than anything these rappers or these singers can influence these kids, because they're around these people every day. Even though we're getting these messages from these pop stars and these hip hop stars, the people that they're around every day, especially their peers, hold more of an influence on our kids than I think these pop stars do.
Okay. Collectively, these peers they have a soundtrack.
They do.
Right? What was the first time you heard Molly, the drug Molly?
Shit, I don't know.
The first time I heard it was that rapper, the crazy that everybody thought was a joke. And I guess he was. You ain't heard from him. Had the gold teeth and the crooked gold teeth, and he looked like a caricature.
I don't know. I don't know his name. I think I know who he's talking about. I don't know who the fuck he is.
Okay, that guy. That was the first time I heard of Molly. Molly became one of the hottest drugs in hip hop because of that, right? Lean. That was something that was exclusive to Texas, right? But once Lil Wayne and Soulja Boy and these guys start doing their little lean, their little drinks, that became a thing with people everywhere within the hip hop genre. You know, I think I understand what you're saying. But again, we got to be careful when we use ourselves.
Yeah, I hate being so anecdotal with it.
Yeah, I if I'm honest, and I go back, when NWA first came out and Ice-T and those guys came out in the mid to late 1980s, I'm living on the West Coast and I'm living in the very neighborhood that they're talking about, right? So I'm seeing everything they're saying in their songs. I see it, right? And I remember me and my friends. I remember us getting in the car, driving around and harassing girls who we knew were gonna, flip us off or whatever, just so we could say, "Fuck you, bitch," and keep going. You know what I'm saying? Because we were like, "Oh man, yeah, we're just like NWA." That's what kids do. But then I also remember in 10th grade wearing my Africa medallion, carrying a backpack full of books. Yeah. Books about Black historical figures that I only learned about because rappers had told me about them, and then sitting at the lunch table and trading them with our friends. Right? We were not allowed to call each other nigga. If you said the word nigga, you got ostracized right then and there. You couldn't call a girl a bitch. You had to call her a queen. This was all because hip hop told us to do it. So just as hip hop told me to do that, it can also tell someone else who didn't have the proper guidance, who doesn't have, whose collective of peers also don't have have guidance. It can influence them to do these things too. And so, I talked to a gentleman real quick. I talked to a gentleman yesterday. He is, his name is Dr. Mike Viega. He's a psychologist and professor at the, the University of New York. But he's a music is a thing, and this guy knows his hip hop shit. Like, if I bring up Kendrick, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. If I bring up Wale, he knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. Very respectful of the culture, right? So when I started asking him these questions, like, hey, what do you think that that this music is influencing people for negatively? He really didn't have much of a comment. He said, I can't answer that because although I love the music, I don't share the history. You know, I didn't, you know, I had a different life than the guys who were making these songs made.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm saying that is that because I think this is why we're not getting an actual study critiquing hip hop in this way. Because if someone's going to do it, chances are it's going to be a white doctor who does it. And all right off the bat, they're going to call him racist. Just somebody called me a coon today. Shout out to my man Tariq. What was his name? You saw it. What's his name? Tariq Raj or something. This kid now keep in mind he's on his profile picture with a white girl saying you a coon ass. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, you know, I'm with interracial relationships and shit, but why would you call me a coon? Like I'm looking through your profile pics and it's just you and a bunch of white people. Like, you know, you pro-black or whatever. Oh, I can't hang around white people. I'm just not if you're gonna call people coons, you know, because you don't like what they're saying about your you know your choice of music. Some things are just true, man. Hip hop is a very powerful tool. This is why we see Fortune 500 companies using it to advertise their wares, because it goes straight to the subconscious. And if it's going to be powerful for positive, then we must also accept the fact that it can be powerful for negative. And I'll let you take that.
I think that, you know, to a large degree, hip hop has. I'm not negating the fact that there can be a negative connotation to hip hop, or that I'm not arguing against that. I really am. I'm not, right? I'm just I think about when we consume media, and you know, some of the, like, how many different, you know, forms of media we take in, whether that be television, whether that be movies, whether that be the music that we listen to, and how we're affected by what our friends and our family and everyone around us kind of absorbs things. And so, like, you take, for instance, I remember an old Scarface line where he said, Gangsta Nip, Spice One, and Tupac never gave a gun to me. You know what I mean? And he's talking about how everyone was criticizing gangster rap for everything going wrong in the hood. Like, everybody, like, I remember Tipper Gore made a really big push about it. Like, I remember Reverend Calvin Butts was steamrolling over CDs and stuff of gangster rappers and everything else. And he was talking, like, you know, no one blames Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Arnold Schwarzenegger could be on a movie. He done killed 11 million motherfuckers. Liam Neeson is the new Arnold Schwarzenegger. Them Taken movies, he done killed like 1,000 motherfuckers every movie, right? But nobody really comes at him with the same sort of vitriol, or the same sort of, or they don't believe that he has that same sort of influence on people with these movies, right? These like, you actually see Liam Neeson shoot and kill a motherfucker in the movie. So, you know, it kind of goes into that whole strain of, you know, we can take this in, you know, you got to be careful of, you know, who absorbs these images and absorbs these messages and everything else. And that's where I think a lot of parental responsibility comes into play. But you can take these in and not necessarily place the blame on the art or the actions of people. So if say, for instance, the guy who just shot up that college up in Oregon, right? You go back and you listen to whatever it was he might have had on his iPod. He might have had some Marilyn Manson on there. He might have had some Scarface on there. He might have had some Ice Cube on there. But at the end of the day, this dude already had shown predispositions to being pretty fucked up and wanting to go kill people. And so it gets to the point where, can we really blame the music? Can we really blame the movies? Can we really blame the art for the actions of people? And that's where I kind of get that pushback from. That's where I'm just like, I don't know. We going a little bit too far with it.
Well, yeah. See, the thing about music is people will say that it was the music of the 1960s that brought the kids together, that brought the Vietnam War home and brought it to an end and caused political change. We give music all the credit when it's good, right? But as soon as it's related to some fuckery, suddenly, oh no, that's not the music. You know, now you said something interesting about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this is something that always gets brought up. You know, the movies, you know, the movies, they do this. It affects the brain totally different. right? Okay. And again, I got to refer to the fact that hip hop has a requirement of being real still to this day, right? Now, a kid, the youngest child who watches Training Day, looks on the screen and they see Denzel Washington playing this bad lieutenant. They're like, oh man, this guy's a bad motherfucker. His language, oh man, he's a gangster, right? The difference is the next time they see him in an interview promoting the movie, he's just Denzel. So a small child can see like, oh, okay, he was playing a role there, but this is not who he really is. When he sees him accepting his award, oh, okay, he was just acting in that movie. The difference with that is these rappers, they're going to act like a fool on the record. They're going to act like a fool promoting the record. They're going to act like a fool when they get their Grammy. Yeah, that's right, you know what I'm saying? They're broken English and all, right? And again, I'm not talking about all of hip hop.
Oh, I know.
You know, we look at Jay-Z. We could clearly see that this dude is in a higher echelon now. You know, we look at Kanye. We look at Kendrick even, you know, and we can see the difference. But Rick Ross acts the same everywhere he goes all day. Even after getting exposed for being a liar, he just kept on. It's a persona, you know. And again, you and I know the difference. A lot of us know the difference, but a young person may not. You know, I mean, we've read them articles of kids who shot themselves in the arm because they wanted their mixtape to get hot, or robbed something because they thought their mixtape was going to get hot. You know, there's a lot of kids, you know, and we talk about parental responsibility and whatnot. You got to understand, stupid people have more children than intelligent people. They have them willy-nilly, right? So, you know, making those kind of demands is not going to help. So anyway, back to my original point. When it comes to movies, it's not going to have the same effect on a young person who watches it that the music will.
Well, even when you make the analogy of a stupid person having a lot of kids, right?
Yeah.
It goes right back into the influence of those around you, right? When I talk about the influence of those around you. So, you know, if, say for instance, my mother wasn't the brightest bulb in the box, right? and to some degree, like the funny thing is, a lot of folks would probably say your mother probably wasn't smart for letting you listen to Robin Harris and Eddie Murphy at 8, 9, 10 years old, right? A lot of people would have that line of thinking. But I look at it and I'm looking at it as if, you know what, she exposed me to some things. I might have been a little young, but she exposed me to some things a little bit ahead of my peers, where I thought about things a little bit differently than my peers, where I saw things a little bit differently than my peers listening to some of that shit. I probably still shouldn't have been hearing some of it, but she still didn't shelter me in such a way where I wasn't aware of a lot of things. So, you know, one of the things I think back on, man, when I was a kid, I want to say maybe 12 or 13 years old, man, like the first time like I had ever been, like somebody told me one time I should drop out of school. 13 years old, fresh out of 8th grade. Now, mind you, I'm in an area where, you know, like a lot of the guys that, like, you know, some of the older guys, they had gone into the drug dealing thing. Some of the younger guys, like I remember one of my boys, man, still my friend to this day. I'm glad he just got out of prison, but I'm just glad he's still here. But I remember this dude telling me, like, when he's like, yo, man, if I ever start selling weed or if I ever start selling drugs, smack the shit out of me. And when I first saw him sell some weed, I smacked the shit out of him, right? Wow. He was like 14 years old. But I just remember being in that environment where like everybody's telling me, yo, man, you need to just go ahead, give school up and come selling drugs, you know, start selling weed with us. And I had that influence as my peers. But then I had my mom right there, like, if you get your ass out there and start selling anything, I'm beating the fuck out of you. Yeah. Right? The influence that my mother had on me, I was much more afraid of my mother than any motherfucker on this earth. Right? And I also had the whole thing of I didn't want to disappoint her either. So, you know, no matter what music I listened to, no matter what movie that I watched, even like, you know, to a large degree, the powerful influence that my friends had on me at the time, because I was actually seriously thinking about the shit, right? But the influence that my mother had on me at that time curbed a lot of that shit. And that's where I still believe where, you know, I'm just of the mindset of the parental influence and the influence of your friends have a much more powerful influence than the media that we consume.
Imagine if your mama was a Nicki Minaj fan, and at the family barbecues, instead of the electric slide, she was popping her ass in front of you and all your friends.
Listen,
I'm saying this is a different generation. Their parents are have grown up with this bullshit music. So you know, we're talking about a whole different collective here.
I'll say this. My mother was a Millie Jackson fan.
Yeah, who's mine?
What's that? And I distinctly remember, and this is really fucked up. I hate that she did this. I remember my mother for Halloween, 1989. My mother was a dick for Halloween, right? So my mother was like. So my mama wasn't exactly like the most wholesome person in the world. You know what I'm saying? And I love my mother. My mother's my queen. Like, I will fuck a nigga up if he ever said anything sideways about my mother to this day. My mother wasn't, and she was young when she had me. My mother was only 20 years old when she actually 19. She turned 20 a month after she had me. So it wasn't as if like my mother was super duper old and she had these really wholesome values and everything, and she was learning as she went, along with a whole lot of other folks. My mother was young when she had me. When she died, she was 37, right? So, yeah, man, I mean, I had these things around me and I had these different influences around me, but at the same time, my mother still instilled a sense of sense into me to say that, yo, you better not go out here and do this, or there are some consequences behind that. And the first consequence was dealing with her, and I didn't really want to do that.
There you go. Yeah, and you know, again, we got to be careful because
like everything I got right now is really anecdotal. But you know, the thing with that though, and again, I don't want to really talk over you, brother, but I think the thing of that though is that, like, when we talk about the influences, I think the influences of the mass media aren't as great as those of the influences of the people that we have immediately around us.
Yeah, and this is true. But these people around us, collectively, we have soundtracks. We have soundtrack. You and your boys get together with music. I don't care where you are. I don't care what it is. You guys will put on music that's relevant to all of you and that resonates with all of you. And I teach my kids this. You know, we got to respect our minds the same way we respect our bodies. Now, if you leave it up to a child will eat cake and candy all day. I think we've all said that. When I grow up, I'm going to buy candy and cake, and that's all I'm going to eat, right? As you get older, you realize you just can't do that, right? Right?
Yeah.
So music is the same way. There's music that empowers us, that makes us feel good about ourselves, that have good messages, that make us love, that make us cry, that make us, and then there's music that makes us angry.
Yeah.
So just like you got food that's fortified with certain vitamins and whatnot. Then you got junk food. Junk food is okay in moderation. But if that's all you eat, you're not going to be a healthy person. And the same thing, if this is all you're fortifying your subconscious mind with is misogyny, anger, materialism, and bullshit, you're probably going to have a bullshit community. Because one of two things is happening here. Because we like to say that all the music is just reflective of what's happening, right? Instead of the music, I kind of think there's a volley going on there, actually.
Yeah.
But that's scary because what you're saying is fucked up is what we naturally are. If that's the only music we can make. Now I'm not saying real quick before I let you continue. I'm not saying that all music should be positive. I'm not saying that all images should be positive. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is that within the genre, there needs to be that return to the collective representations of who we are as Black people, right? There's plenty of rappers right now who are talking about positive things. They're talking about being fathers. They're talking about family. They're talking about love and devotion. There's rappers who are doing this right now. They're just not on the main stage. There's plenty of female rappers out there that are talking about female empowerment that would be very useful to a lot of these young sisters to hear. But Nicki Minaj's microphone is much louder than theirs, right? So I'm not saying that everything has to be positive, but right now everything is negative. Well, not right now. Right now, again, I'm starting to like hip hop again. But as of, you know, when I first started my campaign against, you know, the fuckery in hip hop, most of it was negative. It was, everything was negative. And this is what, you know, this is what the kids were being exposed to. I still think they're being exposed to much more than they should be. But it's getting better with artists like J. Cole. Again, I really like the contributions that Drake makes, because, you know, although he does, he's hip, he doesn't make his entire platform about violence and a bunch of bullshit, you know. So anyway,
yeah, I mean, like, even right now, I mean, like, some of my favorite artists right now aren't necessarily mainstream to a large degree. Like, Big Crit gets a lot of play in my car, and like I think right now that is my favorite rapper right now. And I've listened to that was the Scarface just released, that deeply rooted. That shit goes hard. He's saying some of the same shit he was saying back in '92 to a large degree, but at the same time, it's like I'm 35 now and I'm listening to it and I got a different understanding of some of the shit that he's saying. But even still, like, say for instance, when you talk about like you know, whether or not we're naturally just fucked up, right? I think some of the conditions that produce the artists are fucked up, and it comes out in the music, right? And that's not to say that, like, you know, again, that, you know, like, you get an artist like, say for instance, a Young Thug, who people are now boycotting because they don't necessarily like, for one, they don't like his image, for two, they don't like his music, right? So like, I seen like they were talking about boycotting him throughout the Midwest, like Kansas City, Chicago, or whatever. They rejected this guy from coming to perform any shows there,
as they should,
and probably so. I mean, but at the same time, you know, you think about this though, like, there are people who gravitate towards that, and they have a right to be entertained the same way that everybody else does, right? Can you imagine, like, say for instance, somebody got mad and they said, well, Scarface can't come to Las Vegas to perform, or he can't come to Detroit to perform because a certain segment of people didn't necessarily agree with what he was saying and what he represented. There's always going to be somebody for an audience. There's always an audience for somebody. I might not necessarily like what he's saying. I might not necessarily like what he represents, but there's an audience for him, right? And that's and it's not up to me to say you can't listen to that because I don't fuck with it, right? But I think that's kind of fucked up.
But see, this is a problem in the Black community. There are some things that we collectively have to say fuck that to. Okay. There's some like, no, we don't need no more of that. Get out of here. Go sell that shit in Europe. Go sell that shit where they'll have you. We're not having that shit here. You know, we got too much of you. You're at this point, you're regurgitating the same shit that NWA told us 30 years ago. We already know that your mother made a bad choice in the man that she fucks, or your daddy wasn't around. We already know that you ate hot dogs and chips for dinner. We already know that your homeboy died in your arms. We know these fucking stories. You're at this point, you're not being an artist, you're being a biter, which is a big no-no in hip hop. You know, you're regurgitating the same stories. Be original. Kendrick is from the same neighborhood you are. He's being original with the way he's presenting it. Still gangster. He's still talking that gangster shit. He's still telling those tales, but he's doing it from the heart, not from the head. You dig what I'm saying? Heart rhymes with art. Head rhymes with dead. Most of these rappers are coming from the head, right? When I see that Young Thug's music has inspired a challenge, a movement of motherfuckers throwing up gang signs, and that shit is cool, I'm like, oh, no, get him out of here. Throw that shit away. Yeah, boycott that motherfucker. Shout out to the Midwest. Whoever boycotted that motherfucker, shout out to
you. But you know what? The funny thing is, like, even when you talk about gang signs and all that other shit, that's not new. It never has been new. That's some shit that we grew up with. That is not new. So to act as if this dude is doing something that is brand new and he's influencing these kids have probably already been around this shit anyway. You know, okay. I'm not saying that this is something that should be promoted. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it's something that's
by that logic.
But it's not new.
Hold on. By that logic, police brutality isn't new.
Okay.
Fuck the Black Lives Matter movement then.
That's not a.
I'm just saying.
That's not a good analogy, bro.
No, it is, because gang warfare has been an issue in the Black community. At some point, we have to say stop, right? We have to say stop this. Just like right now, people are saying stop the police brutality, right? As they should. That's all I'm saying. So I'm saying just because it's something that ain't new doesn't mean that just let it continue. It's already been that way.
No. I think you misunderstand what I mean.
Okay.
All I'm saying is that with an artist like a Young Thug, like this thing of him supposedly influencing new people to do these things, I'm saying that these people were already doing these things. What he's presenting isn't new. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that he should, promote these things. And I'm not saying that, these are things that aren't, negative influence. All I'm saying is the things that he's doing isn't new, as opposed to, well, the only thing that I could say he's doing that's new is presenting what they would call like the homo thug, which people have issues with, homosexuality and everything else. That's and that was the biggest push when it came towards his doing these shows in the Midwest. A lot of people are were upset with his purported homosexuality or promotion of homosexuality than it was his actually being a thug. It was about the homosexuality portion of it more so than his thugness.
Well, that is a weird combination, though. You got to admit that's a weird combination. Listen, I'm cool with homosexuality, but the homo thug. Here's my thing: is if you're gay, I should know it. You know what I'm saying? So I already know. Like I ain't gonna take my shirt off around you. You know what I'm saying? I'm just joking, but I'm just saying that. Did you see that just came out? That guy, him and his crew in the studio, and they got gay porn on the TV. And you go look it up. It's all over the internet right now. And so yeah, when it comes to hip hop, you're gonna have a lot of homophobia because it was rooted in that. There's nothing you can do about that. But I want you to just consider something. There are a lot of people right now that are members of an organization called NAMBLA, which I believe is the National Association for Man-Boy Love.
Heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, these are grown men who are fighting for their right to be able to have relations with young boys, right? And this is an organization. These people feel justified in their warped sense of sexuality, but to them it's normal. Now I want you to imagine an artist comes out with music that caters to that fuckery, right?
Okay.
And then would any of us complain or have any reservations about that artist being banned from their city or from going on tour? Be like, no, fuck that. Get out of here with that shit. Perform only for those people that you're relevant to. You're not about to get on loudspeakers and expose yourself to young people in other places that would otherwise never hear it. So I feel that same way about artists who promote gang culture at this point. Right, I understand where it came from. I understand, what led up to its existence. But at this point, to take damaged people and put them on a pedestal and show the rest of these kids that all they have to do is be damaged and they too one day can be put on a pedestal is absolutely wrong and absolutely irresponsible of us as a community to allow and to tolerate. There are certain things that collectively we have to say fuck that to.
Well, on that, I think we can come to some agreement there. I think we can come to some agreement there. Like I don't find, I guess I think with artists like Young Thug, I just don't find his shit any good. And like a lot of the artists that he would be compared to a large degree, like a Gucci Mane, like maybe even a Lil Wayne to a large degree, I just don't find their shit any good. So I just like fuck them anyway. But yeah. At the same time, again, when we go into the whole thing of, these negative influences, like you'll have a certain segment of the community who will think that because Young Thug is a supposed homo thug, that it now is making their sons homosexual thugs, right? Because they're listening to this music, right? As if just this mere suggestion of like, being a homosexual is like, maybe I'm going to try some dick today. And I think that's, you get, you'll get that sort of like pushback. And I think that's what a large degree of the pushback to Young Thug is the homosexual thug, whatever the fuck. Like, I don't know, man, but I think that's where a large segment of his pushback comes from. But at the same time, when it comes to the influence of the music, again, I'm gonna go right back to it. I think it's our immediate influences, man. I think it's those people around us that have much more of an influence on us than that music that we're listening to.
And again, those people will collectively listen to music together. You always, yo, man, come listen to it. Especially back in the day. Yo, you heard that new joint? I got it. Somebody had the new Tupac CD. Everybody came over to listen to it. You know, and it's like in your parents' day. Those comedy albums. My parents used to do that shit with Red Fox and Richard Pryor. Everybody would come over, and they were called party records. Yeah. You put on it, and everybody would sit together and laugh at these comedy routines on a record. So yes, those people are powered by okay, as we both agree, the music pretty much wakes up the seeds that are already within, right?
Right.
Last thing we need is for damaged people who are fucked up to have a soundtrack legitimizing their fucked upness. You dig what I'm saying? See, if you have a certain way about you and you know it's wrong, you're probably going to try to keep it secret. You know, you're probably going to try to, you know what I'm saying? You're going to try to keep that part of yourself hidden.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you look on MTV or BET, which don't show videos no more, but let's just say for the sake of argument, you look on MTV or BET, and there's this rapper who's you know, got a bunch of chicks around him, and he's got gold and crystal and all this, and he is rapping about your very sickness, legitimizing it. You're like, shit, there's money in this sickness. Shit. Right? And then your friends who don't have the sickness are going to wish they had the sickness, right? And together y'all going to act like sick fucks, right? Because it's popping now. It's popping to be this. And for the record, people, I don't think Young Thug is whack. I don't. I just think he sounds like Bugs Bunny. But he has a very interesting...
I think he's whack. I'm just... I think he's...
No, listen. He has a very...
Hot guy.
Him and them, you know, him and that sonically, him and that Rich Homie Quan, those kids, they have an interesting delivery. They have a very... I don't like what they're saying.
Yeah.
I don't like his voice. I don't like that Bugs Bunny high-pitched shit. But his cadence is a little bit unique. So I can understand the allure of the young people that like him. But he's got to go. The black community, we have got to come together and say, listen, this shit has got to go. We're not putting up with this. And we have the power to do that. We did it to MC Hammer, right? And it wasn't about money because, you know, people always like to say, well, it's the labels. The labels are the one. Labels ain't got that much power if we don't support it. MC Hammer was making more money than anybody in hip hop. He was the first rapper doing arena shows like Michael Jackson numbers.
Yeah.
Pepsi and all these Sprite and all these big sponsors. But yet the community wasn't having it. We was like, man, we ain't buying that shit. And when you don't get that legitimacy, that's you know, that's what it is, man. We got to understand that as African Americans, we are culturally the most influential people on the planet.
Yeah.
People look to young people look to us from around the world for what's cool. They look to us for what's cool, right? And this is why you'll see, like, even these white pop stars, they have to get the black vote first. Look at Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift has now turned into, like, she's Beyonce now. She's doing a song with every rapper in the game, and because she's getting that black vote, saying, hey guys, look, I'm cool. So now all the other white people say, oh, look, she's down, she's cool, and then she's gonna go right back to him. Right? That's what Miley Cyrus did. That's what Pink did. They all come. They got to come to the hood to get credibility. And then they go back home. Nicki Minaj is doing it. Nicki Minaj, like, she'll get her hood respect, but she go right over there with them, making pop songs about Barbie dolls and shit. You know, so knowing that, we got to be very careful of the image of us that's going out around the world. We got to take control of that. Right? We are not all thugs. We are not all angry. We are not all misogynist. And we need to let our main export, which is hip hop, reflect that.
Hey, bro, I hate to interrupt, but I got to run to the bathroom.
Go ahead, bro. I'll keep the people on ice. All right, guys. Well, you know, I'm just talking to an empty screen at this point. But for those of you guys, if this is your first time listening, understand that me and Antoine Spann are friends. Like, these are conversations that we really have over the phone. Like, and we agree on most things in life. You know, so sometimes we have to sit on the phone for about an hour. before we come to something that we disagree with. Oh, you disagree? Oh, let's go on air. And then we created the Art of Disagreement because we thought it was very important for young people to see that you can disagree about polarizing topics without deteriorating into fighting or ad hominem attacks. It's just at the end of the day, you guys have a discussion, try to hear the other person out and understand their point of view, acknowledge when they make a good point. And even if you still disagree, at the end of the day, you just agree to disagree, but you remain friends. You don't have to be, oh, fuck with that nigga, man. Fuck that nigga. I'll shoot that motherfucker. It ain't got to come to that, you know? And the only way we're ever going to have growth in the Black community is if we have these uncomfortable discussions, right? If the person who's thinking this way and the person who's thinking that way never come together to discuss their differences, then they'll never understand each other and they'll just stay divided forever. So that's why we created this forum, and I want to thank all of you guys for your support. I know a lot of you guys don't like my stances on a lot of things. Shout out to all y'all who call me a coon and whatnot. But and it's cool. I understand. I understand that you don't agree with what I'm saying, but you must understand that Black people are not a monolith. Everyone doesn't have to agree with you, right? If we're going to complain to the cops and everybody, you know, don't treat me like, you know, a thug, because we're not all the same, then don't act like we're all the same. Don't expect us to all think alike, you know. So that's what it's all about. My man is back. So you got a gun on your hip? See, yeah, hip hop. You see what hip hop done did to this? I'm fucking with you, though. Oh, you couldn't hear me. Oh, you didn't hear me.
Yeah. What's up?
I pointed out your gun on your hip, and I said it was hip hop that influenced you.
Oh shit! Anybody been listening to the Spann Report long enough to know? God damn it! So, yeah, I was just filling the people in on how we came to this series, Art of Disagreement, and what it's about. Okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, I was sitting up here doing the dance right here in the chair, man. It was like, oh,
I noticed that. I noticed the bouncing. I saw that. I didn't know that's what it was, but I saw that.
Yeah, you know, sometimes it happens. These damn occultos, man. They ain't even gave me a damn endorsement deal and no shit like this, but these motherfuckers are good.
Are they? Okay, I hadn't even heard of that. That's some satanic shit. See, hip hop has influenced him to drink some satanic beer.
It's more like a sugar skull, man. That's a sugar skull, like Mexican. Yeah.
What does it taste like? What is it? Is it like a Corona?
It's more so like a tequila infused beer.
Okay.
Get up on these, man. These are really good.
That's what's up.
Probably would send me to the motherfucking bathroom, but
hey, before we get off of here, I have to throw a shout out again to both Judith Pinkerton and Dr. Mike Viega of the University of New York. These people were very, very helpful, because I'm going to tell you what, man, I was coming in to this argument the way I would have came in 2 years ago when I was doing my campaign.
Yeah.
But these people helped me to understand, just because they're coming from a clinical, they're coming from a scientific perspective on the influence of music. So that's why I was so easily able to accept what you said when you said these things were already in the person. You know, they were already in the person, and it just, it just enhanced that feeling. That was something I learned from these very informed people on the subject. I had never considered that, never thought about that. But I want to throw a shout out to both of them. You could check Judith out. She wrote a book, The Sound of Healing. You guys can get that on Amazon. You can look her up on YouTube. She did a TED Talk. Mike Viega has done some great work, with some studies with hip hop. He has used hip hop to assist young people, especially when it comes to freestyling and stuff like that. And he's very versed on hip hop. So I just want to throw a shout out to them. They were very helpful in my mind state coming into this debate. So
indeed, brother, indeed. Like I said, man, like I remember I did a video on YouTube, and I'll put that video up on the SpannReport.com on this episode, so you guys can go ahead and check that out. Once we get done here, I'll have that posted up on the website. But I did a video about that because I remember, you remember back maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when it was really popular to talk about how Freemasonry had infiltrated hip hop and how Jay-Z was a Freemason and everything else, right? And how the music was making us do certain things. Yeah. And I even did a series, 6-part series, The Honest Truth, Freemasonry, Hip Hop, and Devil Worship. So you guys can go check that shit out if you want to too. But I remember I did a video, man, and I was talking about the influence of music and how sometimes the music can be a scapegoat for some of the things that people were already just predisposed to do. And so like I've had this feeling for like years now, man. This isn't something that I just kind of like thought about just for the sake of this debate or anything else. Like I've had this feeling for years that, you know, when it comes to the music, a lot of times when people are out here doing fucked up shit and the music becomes a part of the discussion, that the music was just the background and that these people were already predisposed to do some fucked up shit. So yeah, man. Yeah.
Keep in mind though, we got to keep in mind with that is that a lot of us are predisposed to a lot of things. Mm-hmm. We don't need that extra push. These artists need to be held accountable for their influence. Nicki Minaj needs to be held accountable for her influence on young black women, which are the ones who are going to connect with her. You know, when she's making complaints that her album didn't win the award, as if it was some kind of creative, you know, explosion. It was a sample song that talked about popping pills and having promiscuous sex with cocaine dealers. You know, but she made it a race thing. You know, we need to hold her accountable for her influence on young women, right? Because we cannot say we have not seen these young women that walk around thinking they're Nicki Minaj, right? We got to hold Young Thug accountable, right? For celebrating a culture that has taken so many lives, right? And making it cool. You cannot make an entire album glorifying murder, drugs, and misogyny, and then give one interview and say, you know, kids stay in school. Fuck that. I'm not a role model. Fuck that. We as a community got to start holding these people accountable. Either that, or we got to start holding these labels accountable and tell them we want more diversity. We want more representation of African American people in this music. There are female rappers who are have a very positive message for young women that are just as good as Nicki Minaj. There are young men out there who are every bit as good as Drake or every bit as good as Kendrick Lamar, who are celebrating education, celebrating fatherhood, and they're doing it in a very effective and dope way. Mm-hmm. So as a community, we got to come together and we got to make a choice. You know, we got to start holding these artists accountable for the fuckery that they are glorifying.
Well, you know, one of the things when we talk about accountability that I want to add to that list of folks that you talked about are the parents of the kids who are actively listening to this music, to tell that, you know, to really reinforce this image or reinforce this message that, you know, some of the things that you may take in, whether that be from the music, whether that be from the video games, whether that be from the movies or what have you, that some of these things that these people are talking about aren't good, they aren't real, and at the end of the day, you do what the fuck I say do. Right? And to a lot, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. We hear that all the time. It's the parents. We're giving parents too much credit. Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, yes, it is. But you got too many stupid people having children. By that, then we should not blame, you know, solely just cops for police brutality. Individual cops we got only blame the chief. You know, only blame the chief. The chief. You know, there's a lot of chiefs who are corrupt. There's a lot of chiefs who don't know what their officers are doing out there in the field. Artists have a duty. Because I'm going to tell you what, I grew up with a single mother. My father was out in the wind for most of my childhood, right? KRS-One, X-Clan, Paris, Ice Cube, these rappers filled in where my father didn't. They filled in where the school district wouldn't. You know, they fortified me with a presence of self. They gave me the knowledge that put me on the path I'm on today. the knowledge of a history that I was never going to get from the public education system, you know, without these rappers doing it. You know, so again, if you have a platform and you have the ability to save the world with it, why wouldn't you? You know?
Yeah.
People call me a coon. People call the young man called me a coon today, right? Because I'm asking better. I'm asking better. I want better conditions for the people, for black people. But I'm a coon. But he will not call these people coons. These people who are mocking our brothers and sisters who cannot get out of it or having a very difficult time getting out of this situation.
Yeah.
You know, that they're in, who are victims or who have had close family members who are victims of these murders. You got rappers who've never lost anybody, who've never done a day in the hood, you know, who are now live amongst white people in the hills of Hollywood telling you to stay in the hood and have pride in the hood.
Yeah.
Who's a bigger sellout than that? And they're all doing it for $1, which is the very definition of sellout. We got to do better. We got to think better. We got to demand better. Our artists have a responsibility for the influence they put out on the planet, right? Because if that mother or that father is not going to do their duty, at least you can. You might be able to save that kid. So I'll end with that.
And I think, although I agree with you to a certain degree, brother, I think that when you have artists who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds or whatever, whose sole ambition is to get out of their current condition, right? So say, for instance, if they did come from the same environment that you or I may have come from, and the only way that they knew how to get out of it was to rap about X, Y, and Z. Their only concern for themselves is really for themselves to a large degree, because of, you know, whatever reasons, whether that be, you know, financial, whether that be for their own physical safety or whatever, right? But like when we talk about these influences, right? Like say, for instance, you and I, both of us grew up single parent homes, right? Both of us were raised by our moms to a large degree. Yeah. One of the biggest influences, there's two really big influences on my life outside of my mother. That was my mother's boyfriend, a long-time boyfriend, and never got married, but he was a long-time boyfriend, an older guy named Bobby, right? Bobby would, you know, come over to the house to like get in my ass and tell me to keep my room clean, show me how to fit, you know, change the tire, show me how to change the oil in the car, show me how to do a whole lot of little different things. Bobby told me at 10 years old, I'm going to teach you how to be a man, right? And then when my mother died and Bobby died, my Uncle Billy, you know, he kind of picked up that torch to show me different shit. A lot of times it was shit that I had no fucking interest in, but he was like, yo, man, you gonna get out here and you gonna watch me work on this car. You gonna watch me change these brakes on this car. You gonna get your ass up and take this garbage out. You gonna get your ass up and wash these dishes. There was always somebody to get in my ass to tell me these were some of the things that you were going to have to do if you wanted to be a productive member of society. So that's where I get to talking about like that influence of those around us, even with the music that I was listening to, even though I was still listening to Spice One, even though I was still listening to the Bone Thugs and Harmon or whatever else, I had these influences around me to tell me the right thing to do. So I understand that a lot of kids might not necessarily have that luxury that I had. A lot of them probably still don't. I see a lot of these kids today when I'm out at work, they just don't have that influence. But at the same time, you know, when the artists are coming from these same backgrounds, are coming from these same disenfranchised environments, you know, even though we would want them to have a level of social responsibility, some of them simply aren't going to have it, and they're looking for their own self-survival, and even if it is pushing a bullshit message. Now, when it comes to them influencing the kids, that's where it becomes incumbent upon us as parents or as cousins or uncles or whatever to say that, hey, man, that's some bullshit. You know, here's another way to look at the same situation, because we are with these people every day. So that's where I think that again, that the people that are around us are the most biggest are the biggest influences, whether that be, you know, far as like the music or the movies or what have you. Those who are around you every day can shape your reality.
I can dig that. Now, in the 1920s, a very popular form of music in Black culture was scatting.
Yeah.
All that stuff, right? You know why nobody does that now?
Why is that?
Because Black people won't buy it, right? I don't care how much they promote it. I don't care how cute the person is. It's just it's outdated, right? Black people ain't on that shit no more. So again, I'm saying that if I don't care where this person comes from, I don't care what their situation was. If they want to become an artist, they're not going to try to become a scatter because they're not going to get signed being a scatter because no one's going to buy it, right? As soon as we collectively decide you are not going to continue pushing this fuckery in the heads of our children, as soon as we collectively decide that, it goes away, right? The same way somebody amongst us said, don't nobody want to hear that Black power shit. Don't nobody want to hear that. They made Public Enemy go away. They forced Ice Cube to leave Black Power and go back to gangster. You know? So collectively, we need to make a choice. We need to make a choice. We all got cousins. We all got friends that are trying to get on. They've been trying to get on, but we keep seeing the same artists again and again and again. That's the only ones the labels are pushing, right? And our cousins and our friends who are trying to get on can't because of this machine. Don't you think it's time to tear down this machine? Don't you think it's time? Aren't we sick of like, oh, it's because of these heads of these executives and they're not even from the culture and they're culture vultures? If you're really tired of that, let's use some of this 1.1 trillion and let's start empowering Black record companies, then Black distribution companies, right? Let's take control of our image, right? Let's not just sit here and let these rappers continue to come out with this bullshit and just say, well, there's nothing we could do about it. It's the executives. Fuck out of here.
Well, I got a question for you, bro.
Yeah.
When you talk about like collectively, getting together to get behind, say, for instance, one message as far as like what artists we would accept and which artists we won't, which distribution companies we would go with and which ones we won't, which record companies we would go with and which ones we won't. We talk about Black people not being a monolith, right?
Yeah. Yes.
No, I think a lot of that comes with the fact that, you know what, all of us aren't thinking on the same wavelength, and all of us aren't necessarily thinking that there's going to be this one way to go about bringing forth the changes in which you would like to bring forth. And I think that's pretty much the issue right there. Is the fact we aren't all on that same. We aren't all on that same length because we're not that monolithic group of people that we continue to say that we aren't.
And you know what? We don't need to be a monolith. Okay, we don't need all Black people to do it. We just need most. That's all. Just most. Just like most Black people are Democrats. Even though Democrats like the worst thing that can happen for Black people, they will continuously vote for that time and time again. Most Black people go to church, even though church don't do shit for you and has been proven again and again and again they're not going to change your life. These are things that not all of us do, but a large enough majority of us do to make those collectives powerful. The Democrats, the Black vote, according to the Democrats, and the Black dollar to the church, right? We don't all do it, but enough of us do it to make those powerful lobbies. So we don't all have to do it. Most of us have to. That's all.
I see. I hear you. But yeah, man. Time for us to get out of here. We almost running up on the end of our time. So tell the folks how to get in touch with you over it. I'm sorry, man. Before we even do that, we got a poll going up at thespanreport.com, right? And the poll is, wait, let me pull this shit up real quick before we get out of here. Whether or not you believe that hip hop negatively influences our youth. So go to thespanreport.com and go to the Art of Disagreement Volume 4. Go to that page and vote in the poll whether or not you believe it's so, whether or not you say yes, hip hop negatively affects the youth. Vote no, don't believe so, or maybe, or you just not sure. Whatever the fuck.
Add this too. When we say negatively affects, we're not just talking about violence. All right, yeah. We're talking about spending what money you don't have on bullshit, materialism. We're talking about misogyny in the view of women. we're talking about a lot of things when we talk about negatively influencing the youth. Right?
Indeed.
So.
Indeed. And right now, because I'm looking at the poll right now, I'm looking at some of the results of it right now. 57.1% believe that hip hop negatively affects the youth, and 42.8% believe that it doesn't. Right. So, yeah, keep voting in the poll. I will, I will have I will have the end results of that poll on the next episode of the Spann Report podcast, which I'm going to do tomorrow morning. Right. So I got another episode of the Spann Report podcast coming tomorrow morning. But as of right now, 57.1% of you believe that hip hop negatively affects the youth. Right. So majority of the people believe you, bro. They side with you.
That's cool. I appreciate that. And understand this is a different Mr. Gates than the 3 years ago when I first started making I hadn't thought it through as much, but now, I have a little bit more insight as to why I still believe that. And shout out to everybody who just was, instead of hearing me out, they called me a coon. I was on a hip hop show one time.
Yeah.
And they didn't, I was making the argument, and it's, they did some disrespectful shit. They started playing Uncle Ruckus, over me, or right after I got through talking, and because this is, it's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous position, which is why I wanted to explain my position here. For you to critique hip hop, like you can't say, if you say anything, they're gonna say, "Oh, you're trying to be white. You're a coon. You're an Uncle Tom." So I just wanted to make it clear. Now I love hip hop. I am hip hop. I have contributed to hip hop, but I'm not gonna sit here and act like I don't see the fuckery therein. So I'm just holding certain segments of hip hop accountable. And that's all.
Well, and I will say for myself that as someone who's grown up with hip hop, who's watched hip hop grow, who's seen the evolution of hip hop over my 35 years, I just have to take into account the effect that it's had on my life, the effect that I've seen others, the effect that it's had on other people's lives that I know, who I love and whom I respect. I have to take all of that into account when I talk about this issue. And that's where I'm coming from. I know a lot of the things that I said tonight were anecdotal, but when it comes at the end of the day, everybody that I know pretty much outside of my grandparents, outside of like my, the older people in my life are hip hop, and they are the result of hip hop. And I know a lot of successful people. I know a lot of people who have avoided the pitfalls of the hood and who have aspired and going on to do great things with hip hop as a soundtrack to how they went about going to do their shit. So, yeah, man, that's where I'm at with it. That's where I'm at with it. And hopefully you guys, can come to maybe, you side with me, maybe you side with Gates, but hopefully you come to an understanding for yourself as to what, hip hop means to you and what it's done to you and for you in your life, man. But go ahead, brother. Let the people know how to get in touch with you over at Haterazzi.
Yeah, you can hit me up by going to Haterazzi.com. You can Google Haterazzi, and I'm gonna come up. My Facebook and everything is there. You can add me, and I respond. I usually respond to anybody who reaches out. And let me say this for the record, because I've seen this a few times. Okay. Be very, Antoine Spann is my friend. Okay, so we on the last debate we had, people would come over to the Facebook and they agree with me, but then they would take advantage of that to attack Spann. Right now, if you disagree with either one of us, do it respectfully, like we're doing it here. Just say, hey, I don't agree with you, because you don't have to start calling people out of their name and all that, because when you offend him, you're offending me. And if you disagree with him and you're on my side, cool, but make your point without ad hominem attacks. That's all I'm asking. And I say that because my audience is a little bit high powered. Haterazzi is on some comedy and some dark comedy shit, so I can dig that. But when you're talking about Mr. Spann, you're talking about a friend of mine. So keep it respectful if you disagree.
And on that note, just know that I am also a veteran of the Hateration Federation.
Real talk.
I will get in your ass.
That's right.
You know, yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, like the point of this whole thing, the point of the Art of Disagreement is to show people that you can have a discussion, whether you be on opposite ends of that spectrum, and still walk away from that discussion with a mutual respect. And that's why we do this. That's exactly why we do this. So I do appreciate you, brother, for coming on again, man. And yeah, man, this is always good having you on the show, brother.
It's always good to be here, man. I think we get a lot. I think we both learn, and hopefully the audience is learning a lot from both the different perspectives.
Indeed, man, indeed. Before we get out of here, I got to remind you guys how to get in touch with me here at the Spann Report. Let your voice be heard. You can hit me up at the hotline at area code 313-288-0485. That's area code 313-288-0485. Leave me those voicemail messages. I'll play them on the show, and I'll respond to those voicemails here on the show. You can email me here at feedback@thespannreport.com. That's feedback@thespannreport.com. Leave me those emails, and I'll reply to those emails here on the show. Chop it up with me here on Twitter and Instagram. My name on both of those platforms, of course, is Mr._Spann. And if you like, go ahead and like the Facebook fan page. Is Mr. Spann also. I keep forgetting to mention that shit. Go ahead and like the fan page, man. Mr. Spann on Facebook. Go ahead and like that. Send me a what's that? Oh shit, I'm getting caught up here. Damn, Makotos, man. Give me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, man. 5 stars preferably. I'll read those 5-star reviews here on the show, and I will thank you here live on the show with the 5-star reviews on Stitcher and or iTunes, man. And for all of your Spann Report needs, man, go to thespannreport.com. This episode will be available live on thespannreport.com. Go ahead to thespannreport.com and vote in the polls, man. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys are thinking, and get your voice heard, man. We'd really like to hear from you. And go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that. And it's free, man. Don't cost you shit. So, yeah, man. But once again, I'd like to thank my homie, Mr. Gates, for coming on to the Spann Report podcast, Art of Disagreement, Volume 4. Thanks again, brother.
Hey, thank you for having me, brother.
All right, now. And until next time, fam. Peace.
Peace.